Hey everybody, Zyle here with another Guides Not Included video. This one I wanted to talk about pipe logic. It's maybe an older topic and doesn't pertain to relevant content, but it's something that when I first started playing, I struggled quite a lot with understanding how piping works, the logic that's involved, and I figured I'd make a short video just discussing it. So it's my hundreds of hours of play. I've really gone to school on how pipes. And when I say pipes, I am talking about all forms of pipes. So there are three specific types. Normal plumbing, ventilation for gases, and then of course when you're shipping, the conveyor rails. All will function exactly the same. They all have bridges. They all have various outlets to be used. But the main thing is about how pipes work. So let's assume that we have, let's just use gas as an example. Let's assume we have, this is where the piping is coming out and it's flowing out of here, and we have a pipe. So we all know that this will send out packets and it will be a specific amount. Let's not worry about combining and how much it sends, but it sends a stream of gas out and the direction will be this way. Now, let's say you want to split it to go to two different places. Well, an easy way, of course, is you simply make a split in the pipe, okay? And this will cause the packets to split 50-50. So you'll have a nice even split. If you then further downstream it and make another split, and then you were to do the same thing here, something like that, you're going to get the same effect where now 25% is of the total amount is going through 4 channels. So that's one way to do a 50-50 split. At least that's in my experience how it works. Another way you can do a perfect 50-50 split is simply to use a gas bridge. It doesn't really do much, but sometimes for clarity it's easier. Now, what you can do is you can put this gas pipe on, and now if you were to attach outlets from here, you will achieve the same result. You will be splitting it 50-50. However, when you use this, okay, what you can do with this is something that you can't do necessarily with how we did here, right? You can, but it gets a little bit muddled. Now, you could do this, and now you'd have a 3-way split, right? But there's no way to get a 4-way split out of this configuration because there's no more ways to go out, okay? Also, this is messy because depending on what you have downstream, you could cause issues with confusion where packets would think maybe they should go this way. So that's why using bridges is often a better way, because it really makes sure this understands that stuff is flowing this way and not backwards. So now, with a pipe though, you can do something that is quite tricky, which is you can get a 4-way split going. So you got the 3 ways like you would on a normal pipe, but because of this, you can actually go out through here and out. Okay, and now you can have where this is going to go a 4-way split. So if you ever have to split something in 4 directions, this is achievable with using this pipe logic. So you go from 3 to 4. Right, so that's easy. That's easy understanding splits. But what about when we want to have priority? Okay, so let's say I have a gas system here, and let's say it's oxygen, all right? And the oxygen that comes out, and I'm just going to use a pipe because I normally, whenever I split anything, I always will put a pipe bridge in. So let's say then that, okay, well, I want, though, my oxygen, we'll get rid of this for a minute, I want my oxygen to be going to my base, okay? But I also want my oxygen to be going to fuel my rocket, to put oxygen into my rocket. But the base is more important and should always have priority. Okay, well, when it's just simply one way, of course priority is this way. But when I add a bridge here, then the priority is split. It's going to go 50-50. So this is not necessarily what we want. Only when the rocket totally fills up and it backs all the way up to here will then everything start going that way. But there are cases where you can't have that, where, like, especially when you're using for plumbing and things like that, where you need it to always go a certain way and only go the other way as a secondary. So the way that we achieve that is with pipes. So when I do this, I always think like this. This is my primary. I've drawn in my primary, okay? Now I want to add in my secondary, right? So if I go and make it like this, what will happen is the oxygen will flow here, and now this will be considered primary. The bridge is going to get primary, okay? So in order to make sure it goes this way, like let's say this was going from my, this was going to my rocket, and this was going to my base. Well, what's going to happen now is the primary is going to be to the rocket, and the secondary is going to be to my base. So this is done incorrectly. The way a bridge works, or any of these inlet receptacles work, is it always gets priority, and then if it backs up to here, then it will go to the secondary. So if my base was down here, I have to do this differently. Instead, what I would have to do is take a bridge and say, I need you to go to my base. You must go this way. And if you are ever full, and I'm assuming that somewhere in your base, you're never going to always just max out and keep shoving oxygen in your base. So either you'd be using a gas vent will slowly pressurize, but it's not that reliable. So really what you always should be doing, let's say you have a specific amount of max you want into your base, then all you need to do is take a Atmos sensor, put it somewhere. I don't put it right next to the vent. So let's say we put it about that much away. And then we just simply hook this up, and we say if this pressure is less than the pressure I want to achieve, then send a green signal, which means the vent will be open. And if the pressure is less than or is greater than the amount I want, then you close it. And that will cause then your base to get a static amount, pressurized to the amount you want. And eventually, because it will not always be taking all the oxygen down here, it will slowly close up, and it will slowly back itself up to here. And then what will happen is you have this as secondary, because remember, priority goes to bridge, and then off this outlet, if it backs up, it will then start to go here. But it will never go down this path if this never backs up. Okay, so this is not a means to get oxygen to go the way you want unless it's going to back up, right? Now, you could do other tricky moves as well to put in various shutoffs and so on in order to make sure you're bleeding some off, right? So, for example, instead, what you could do in this case, very clever trick in order to say, because some people would say, well, it never backs up, so my rocket never gets any fuel, right? So you could then take a gas shutoff valve, right? And you could stick it in here, and you run that like that, and now you take automation. And there's various ways to do it, but a very simple way is simply to run an automation wire and then stick a timer sensor on it and set the settings for this. So green is going to be a specific amount of time. So let's say we set this to 550 green and 50 red. That means for 50 seconds of the day, it will go red. This will lock off, and when this locks off, the priority now goes here. It says, I can't go here, so it will flow here. So you could then meter a line with a setup like this, where for a specific percentage amount of time, using one of these sensors, it will flow this way because this will close down, and the rest of the time it's open, and you can set that any way you want. So you often can then gauge exactly how much. Oh, I need to send 90% of the oxygen down to my base, but I want 10% to go this way. So I am going to set this to 10 seconds green, 10 seconds red, and 90 seconds green, and that'll give me my 10 to 90 split, right? So that's just a clever way to use the pipe logic to your advantage in those types of situations. So, a next example. And we've talked about now about priority of flow going forward, but now joining. So let's say we have a situation where I have two sources of a gas. Just an example. I won't get into why or what, but you want them to join up. But in the scenario, you want this one to always be allowed to send its stuff out, and this one only to join this line when this whole line is not full. So in other words, if this thing is not able to fill at 100%, then you will go. And remember, sometimes like packets will, this is better probably discussed with liquid, just for clarity. So we'll look at liquid. So liquid pump. So let's say I've got one source of a liquid, and then I have another source of a liquid. And I need this one to always, always, always be draining, and this one only to add if this is under the drained amount. And it's how would we do it? Well, if we join it like this, it's not going to work to what we want. It's going to be sloppy and confusing, and none has priority. Okay. So what we do in order to ensure priority is we simply take a liquid bridge and we insert it exactly like this. Okay. That is the setup. Now, what is going to happen here is when the water comes down from here, it's going to say, before I send the packet through, is this open? If it's not open, I can't send anything. So if this line was always full, then nothing would ever come out of this. So that is the means by which you can merge together and how priority works, right? That is very important because, for example, let's say we didn't have it set up this way, and what we had done instead was we went like this. Okay, now this won't get confused and try and send it this way because it knows the very next stop is an outlet, okay? So there won't be any confusion here, but what's gonna happen is these two will now try to merge equally. It will, and if they're both full, it will take one from this, one from this, one from this, one from this. If they're not full, then it's just whichever one can flow through. So that's not going to allow any priority. And then there's some cases where you don't want that, where you do want two things to merge as it comes, right? So then you would set it up that way. So that's the pipe logic, very, very basic, and applies in all cases. And it's a simple matter of understanding that pipe bridges are the thing that is going to determine priorities depending on how they're placed. Right, so first example summary, if you have a situation like this is going to be priority, this is going to be secondary. It will only ever go down here if this is backed up to here. And the other one, if you have a merge, and you have it set up in this way, then this is priority and this is secondary, and this will only allow packets through if this line has room. Okay, and those are two very, very important principles in pipe logic to understand that new players should try and master, because it can get confusing when you start ramming pipes. Now I'll show you my base just quickly, a couple examples of where I'm using this logic and why I'm using it. So in my bathroom polluted water system, and I won't go into too deep detail, I just want to use the example. What we have is an overflow system. So with bathrooms, it's a question of how much polluted water are you producing and where is it going? Well, in my case, I'm producing it and it's going into feeding plants, right? But there can be times where maybe this overproduces, and then what would happen is this pipe would start getting backed up. All right, and I'm sure people have experienced this, where your bathrooms get backed up to where there's no outlet room because for whatever reason you're not using it fast enough or getting rid of it fast enough. So the way that you can prevent this is by using pipe logic, okay? So what we have here is this is the first nexus point where we make a decision. And as you can see, I have a line that goes out here. This line right here is priority, okay, or secondary. All right, the liquid bridge is the priority. So the priorities go from here to here. However, it's saying if you are ever backed up to here, which as you can see it is right now, then go through this secondary. You see how I tuck out? You can come in under the bridge and tuck out like that. A lot of people don't understand that or know that. So it tucks out. This is then secondary. So whenever this is backed up, flow to here, and it just goes into a simple reservoir which will pass through. It won't store it, it just passes it through, and it ends up coming back out. Now, why does it come back out? It goes into a system here where it says to this bridge, hey, if you have room here, then put it in. So literally what we're doing here is saying, hey, if you are too much flow, go through this buffer zone. And if the flow remains too high, then it will actually start to store up inside these. But then it says, if you have room in this pipe, in other words, you're not producing enough and this is starting to get low, then start sending your stuff in. But don't send it in unless you have there's nothing in these pipes. So in other words, you have priority. So that's where you can use, I'm using both logics I've discussed in order to set up a buffer loop to make sure that the amount of water going in is not going to overflow and it's not going to underflow, provided that the overall amount of liquid I'm producing is within the margin of what I need to get in and out of there. So that's an example of where I'm using that pipe logic. Both the priority of flowing in as far as what's priority and what's secondary, and then the priority of coming back into a pipe as far as what's priority and what's secondary. So anyways, just a quick little tutorial on how Pipe Logic works. I hope this helps some people. If you appreciated the video, I'd really love it if that you would like the video and consider subscribing. I plan to make more guides about some of these more in-depth topics in the future. Anyways, I appreciate your time and have a good day.